We've been speaking a lot this morning about what is easily the biggest news story of the day. And
absolutely.
that was Charlie Sheen's appearance on the Today Show, his interview with Matt Lauer, and the revelation that he has been living with HIV.
For 4 years.
For 4 years, that's correct.
Not like he was recently diagnosed last week. He's known this for almost half of a decade.
He estimates he spent millions of dollars keeping it quiet, and a lot of revelations, which we've covered earlier and we'll continue to cover tomorrow. I am happy to introduce Wally Paynter. Good morning, Wally.
Good morning.
Wally is a local HIV activist and coming in on behalf of the Tri-State Alliance. We're happy to have you here, Wally.
Glad to be here.
You know a whole lot more about this stuff than Kat and I do. So while this is all in the spotlight because of Charlie Sheen, is probably a great time to get the message and the information and the statistics about HIV and AIDS out there.
Sure. Well, first, HIV is a human disease. We're all at risk for it. So there's some basic things we can do to take some precautions, whether it's, knowing the HIV status of who we're with, of using condoms, for people that share needles, using a clean needle every time. So there's actions we can take, but probably the most important action is knowing our HIV status, getting a test.
Right.
Getting a test is a lot easier now. You can find out your results in 20 minutes.
Wow.
There's some...
Really?
Yeah, that is amazing. That's a big change. Used to, you had to wait a week or two for the results. So now, it could be a mouth swab or a drop of blood, and you can get them free from the AIDS Resource Group, from Matthew 25 AIDS Services, from Planned Parenthood. You can even go to your pharmacy and get a take-home kit. That's going to cost you $25 or $30. But even if you don't want to go to an agency, you can take home a kit, and find out your HIV status at home.
Wow.
Is there still, when I was in school, they told us there was a 6-month window of when you could test positive or not. Does that make sense?
Like you could contract it, but you wouldn't necessarily test positive for a certain window of time.
And my example is, I don't have a cold today, but if I had a cold, it's going to take you a day or two to start sneezing.
Sure.
So with this, if you got HIV right now, it would actually take a few weeks or up to 3 months now. The test has gotten better, so it's easier to detect quicker.
Okay.
But a lot of
that certainly is a good thing.
It really is a good thing. But a lot of people have HIV that don't know it. So we want people to get tested. And then the other stat that's really scary is that when you first get it, your body's not ready to fight it yet. So a lot of times that's when you're most infectious, when you've just gotten it, and then you could give it to somebody else very easily.
Wow.
Okay. So there are some steps that we can take to prevent getting the HIV virus.
There are some easy steps: condoms, clean needles, abstaining until you're into a long-term relationship. But even then, people need to know their status and their partner's status.
Right.
Of people should get a test. And then people can roll up their sleeves to try to make a difference locally. And that's always something that we promote. And you could go to Facebook and look at Tri-State Alliance or the AIDS Holiday Project for info on how you can get involved. We distribute over 100,000 condoms a year throughout the Tri-State.
That's
Wow.
an outstanding number of, I mean, that's a lot, but that's a great thing.
It's a great thing, and we just want to remind people, because everyone, especially when you're young, you assume that you're invincible.
Sure.
But people need to take precautions.
Sure.
I just looked at the Indiana State Health Department website, and currently, and these are people we know about, the State Health Department website says there's 321 people in Vanderburgh County living with HIV or AIDS.
Wow.
They said there's 500 in southwestern Indiana, and then as of December of 2014, there's 11,500 people in Indiana, and that's people we know about. That's people who know their status.
Sure, that doesn't include those of us that may or may not be walking around that haven't been tested, that don't know if we have the virus.
And that's right. People need to get tested. People don't know. And my example is, this is a human disease. Everyone wants to talk about, well, how did you get it? How did you get it?
Sure.
Well, in the 1970s, since the 70s, we've had the pill. But how many unplanned pregnancies do we have? We have a lot, because we're human, and we make mistakes, and then we just try to do better.
Right.
So people need to know their status, and then they need to take precautions so they don't get it or if they do have it, so they don't accidentally give it to somebody else.
Sure.
When you say it's a human disease, that means it can affect any human. It's not for certain groups. It has a stereotype of being more common in certain groups, but it can affect anybody.
Yeah, it doesn't discriminate.
No, it doesn't.
It does not discriminate. And in Africa and other places, depending on what country you're in, you see different populations with it. But basically it's anyone who's sexually active, which is almost every adult in the nation and a lot of teenagers. It's anyone that has shared a needle, and addiction is a serious issue.
It absolutely is.
I joke my addiction is food. It's not substances, but we all deal with addictions in some fashion, or at least a lot of us do. And it's a human disease that impacts everybody. It impacts our neighbors. It impacts our family, and we need to show compassion. And we need to roll up our sleeves and try to make a difference.
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, my question was, has the way we've treated the disease, HIV or AIDS, changed? Because you see a lot of people, like Charlie Sheen says he has no symptoms of it, that he hasn't given it to anybody else. You hear about people like Magic Johnson, who's had it since the early 90s and is still with us today. Has medicine progressed to the point where it's very, what's the word I want to use? Has it improved?
I think society's attitudes have improved. I think the medical science certainly has improved. There's a lot of medicine, so people can basically have a natural lifespan, which is great. There's something, and it's somewhat controversial, called PrEP, where people who consider themselves at high risk, including if you're HIV negative and your partner is positive, there's medicine you can take every day to help prevent you from getting that. And on the coast, on the east and west coast, a lot of people take that.
Right.
Here, there's only one nurse practitioner that I know of that prescribes it, and that's Dennis Myers. And then Matthew 25 is going to have that available starting in January.
Oh, wow.
Very cool. So where can we go to learn more about HIV and AIDS?
I always recommend the CDC website. Just look up CDC and HIV. And make sure it's a source that you trust, and the CDC is a source you can trust, because, anyone can put on an internet page and put crazy things on
Sure,
it.
right. Misinformation.
You can put HIV came from Mars, and someone could look that up and say, oh, here's proof.
Literally, on Wikipedia, you can go in and edit things to do that,
absolutely.
So the Center for Disease Control is a reliable source.
It is, and contacting folks like the AIDS Resource Group, Matthew 25, Planned Parenthood for an HIV test, or going to your pharmacy and getting a test kit for home, or going to your private doctor and saying, the next time you have a checkup and saying, hey, when you're running that cholesterol test, could you run an HIV test at the same time? And they will do it.
And they'll do it, yeah.
Wally, thank you so much for coming in. Do you have any questions?
You mentioned the TSA and the AIDS Holiday Project. Do you want to tell us what the Holiday Project is?
We serve over 500 low-income households impacted by HIV and AIDS. We do that with gifts, grocery store gift cards, toys, clothes. We're providing basics for people in over 40 counties throughout the tri-state. So we have different fundraisers. We have Mr. Evansville coming up this Friday night. We have 2 events for World AIDS Day, one at First Presbyterian Church in downtown Evansville, one at the pub. And just a lot of ways to get involved, but it's a way for us to give back and help people. There's certainly more than 500 households impacted by HIV and AIDS in the tri-state.
Right.
These are the low-income ones that are struggling.
That probably, they're not going to have money for, say, Thanksgiving dinner, because most of the disposable income is going to provide medication for the family member.
Exactly. And it's tough being disabled, having a disease with stigma, and having kids. That's a lot of things to face. So we're just trying to do what we can to make a difference and to educate the public that HIV and AIDS impacts entire families. Probably the best way to get involved is to call Tri-State Alliance, or on Facebook, just look up AIDS, AIDS Holiday Project. And you can find out a lot of ways that you can make a difference.
That's awesome.
That's great. Yeah. Wally, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming in with us this morning.